YouTube. This is Hypergun, your chat with the cat, back again for another video. Now, before we actually get started on this one, I'd just like to apologize to everyone who was wondering where I was this past Tuesday. Well, I wasn't able to get anything up because of a lot of things going on in my personal life right now. Just a lot of drama and things I'm trying to work past. That may slow down my progress for a couple of weeks. Like, I know I wasn't able to get anything out this Tuesday, and I may not be able to get anything out next week either. I'm not sure. And I do apologize for that. However, at the very latest, by next Tuesday, not next Tuesday, the Tuesday afterwards, so I believe that would be about the 30th, so the end of June, I should be able to start cranking out videos, same as I always do. So, in order to make up for that, I decided to do this very special edition of Throwdown Thursday. Now, by this point, I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, Hypergon, what the hell was with the intro? That was very different from what it used to be. Not animation-wise, but the sound was different. That wasn't the usual music. Correct. That's because, like I said, this is going to be a very special edition of Throwdown Thursday, one I've actually been looking forward to for quite some time. Now, what I decided to do for this one, first let me give you guys some background. First, for those of you who may or may not know me, odds are you don't, but I am a huge fan of a series known as JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's become a lot more popular recently, and that's mostly because of the anime adaptation. Originally, it was a manga series back in the 80s, made by a guy whose last name is Araki, and whose first name I do not remember. I didn't really look it up, so sorry. But I've been into JoJo for quite some time, actually. It's been several years now that I think about it. I was first introduced to it by a friend who, for the sake of their own privacy, I will give them the self-made alias Mavid Dark. Mr. Dark introduces to me early on in our friendship, a couple years back, and I just instantly fell in love with it. I don't know if it was the compelling stories, the intriguing characters, the amazing art style, or those flamboyant poses of theirs. Something just drew me into the series, and I just couldn't stop. It was just so good. Even at its weakest, I still had to kind of keep going. Also, sorry for anyone wondering what the wobble is about. I had to kind of move my computer to my bed because my desk is a little full. So, sorry about that. Anyway, getting back to JoJo, I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, well, that's great and all. What the hell does that have to do anything with Throwdown Thursday, or Yu-Gi-Oh for that matter? Well, because like I said, this is going to be a very special one. In order to serve as sort of a celebration of the series' current runtime, given that this Friday is going to be the season finale of Part 3, considered by all to be the main part of the JoJo franchise, I am going to be doing a deck based on the primary antagonist of the series, Dio-Brando, an immortal vampire and eternal enemy of the main characters, the Joestars. Now, this deck is actually, I'm not gonna lie, not one of my best. It's inherently flawed because I had to throw in a lot of stuff that's a little bit random and doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. So, since this deck is essentially a reference before a viable deck, I've decided to kind of break it down for you guys and do this a little bit differently. Partially because, again, I need to explain the references, and partially as a sort of recompense for me missing this Tuesday's video. I really do feel bad about it, guys. So what I'm going to do first, I'm actually going to profile the deck, and rather than my usual kind of profiling, I'm actually going to break down not why the cards are there for dueling's sake, but rather why they're there for reference's sake. And then I'm going to get into the duels as I usually do. So, enough chit-chat, let's go ahead and get started on this very special edition of Throwdown Thursday. Alright, so to start this one off, I'm actually just going to go ahead and just blaze with the extra deck because the extra deck has no references in it. It's just things that kind of help make the deck kind of viable. I run 3 Braum because vampires, I run 2 RGS because level 5s, and Shark Fortress. The only reason I run these ones specifically is because I can only use the vampires for dark attribute XYZ monsters, and these are the only rank 5s I could find. Then I just go through my usual spout of level 4, or rank 4s, and that's pretty much it for that. Now, on to the meat of this one. So, as I mentioned, this is a vampire deck, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have noticed, and the reason for that is because Dio-Brando, or just Dio as he's known in later parts, is a vampire. So, I decided I kind of needed to incorporate a lot of the vampire archetype, or at least as much of as I could. For that, I run 1 Shadow Vampire. Now, early on in part 3, when we get to see Dio after he's been resurrected, we don't actually get to see his face. He's sort of in shadows. And even in the PlayStation 2 version of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure game, there was a version of this known as Shadow Dio. So I decided to run Shadow Vampire for that reason. Next up, I run 2 copies of Vampire Duke because he's sort of a noble character. Like, he's not officially from nobility. For those of you who have seen the series or read the manga, you know that he started off in the slums, but he's more royal by pedigree, I guess. It's more like an earned nobility than official nobility, but the man still flaunts it like he owns it, so I gotta give him that. Next up, we have 3 copies of Vampire Sorcerer, actually rounding out the very small portion of this deck that is devoted to vampires. Now, for this one, whenever I see this card, I swear it reminds me of Dio's advisor sort of person in part 3. A small elderly woman who has a power known as Justice. I don't know why. Every time I see Vampire Sorcerer, it just reminds me of her. I'm aware Sorcerer is a male character in the card, but I just get that reminder, so... Plus he's weaker than both of these, so again, kind of showing where Sorcerer lies in comparison, so... We got that. Next up we run, actually, some just standard zombie cards, which was kind of funny, because it actually sort of made the deck have some degree of consistency. So... 3 copies of Zombie Master. Now, Zombie Master is actually kind of a funny one because in the series, specifically in part 1, Dio is able to infect others once he becomes a vampire. And normally that means he creates an army of vampires. Not in this case. In this case, whenever a vampire, or this Dio, bites someone and doesn't completely kill them, they're turned into a zombie. So I kind of thought that was entertaining there. So he's like Dio's the Zombie Master. Next up, we have 3 copies of Mizuki. Now, Mizuki is kind of a funny reference because in part 1, it takes place during like old England and kind of is set there as well. So naturally, one of the characters they decided to include was Jack the Ripper. Well, in Jack's big scene before he fights Jonathan, the initial JoJo, he emerges out of a horse's head and fights with several blades. So whenever I see Mizuki, I sort of just get that Jack the Ripper feeling from it, and that kind of entertains me. Next up, we have Pyramid Turtle, another Part 3 reference, as Dio is hiding out in Cairo, Egypt. It's amazing how many zombie and vampire cards just inherently matched up to this. Truthfully, this was in those last week weren't even me trying to make references. They just kind of made themselves. I was just trying to make the deck not completely suck. Alright, now, before I move on to the next 3, I'm going to actually go back to the first card in the deck, which I'm sure a lot of you guys were looking at and wondering what hell's name that was. That is Arcana Force 21, The World. Now, this is again part 3, where Dio shines most. He has what's known as a stand. Everyone does. That's their powers. And in the initial setup for part 3, they're named after tarot cards. Dio's, being the most powerful, is the World. Most of the others are named via a color and their tarot card, like Hermit Purple, Magician's Red, and even the main character's Star Platinum. But Dio's is just the World. Or, for those of you who have actually watched the series and heard him say it, it is the World! Way more epic in my opinion. Also, fun fact, the person who voiced Dio in the Japanese anime also voiced Sartorius from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. So if you want to hear the Zawarudo without actually watching this, just go watch Jaden's Duel and wait for Sartorius to summon the World. You'll hear it. It's exactly the same and makes me laugh every time. Now, moving on, we have 1 copy of the Dark Magician. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are scratching your head going, what the hell's the Dark Magician doing in there? Well, again, this deck focuses on references before, not sucking. So, I decided to throw in the Dark Magician because of actually a character all the way in Part 6. There's currently 8 parts for those of you wondering. In Part 6, we don't see Dio, because he, spoiler alert, defeated in Part 3. However, in Part 6, we meet a priest named Pucci, who worships the ground Dio walks on and tries very hard to resurrect him.
He also happens to sport a long purple robe sort of thing, very similar to what the Dark Magician wears, and is a priest. So it almost sort of just kind of fit the bill perfectly. And it fits into another reference, which I'll get into a little bit later. Next up, we have one copy of Time Gazer Magician and two for Stargazer Magician. Now, this one was just kind of recommended to me by a friend, and I wasn't taking it seriously at first, but until I realized the potential for it, and it just made me laugh hysterically. So, going back to The World, and why it's an inherently amazing reference there, in the series, Dio's power, the world, lets him stop time. So, it kind of gives him control over time and space, which is kind of funny. Also, kind of going back to the world, if you land on heads, you contribute 2 monsters to skip your opponent's next turn, also kind of symbolizing the ability to stop time, which is just amazing. And ironically, Time Gazer and Stargazer also kind of work out because everything but the world can be pendulum summoned between these levels, which I find hysterical. Now, on to the spell and traps, we have Vampire Empire, or Vampire Kingdom, for those of you in the TCG. This town in the card looks identical to the town that Dio takes over in part 1. I cannot unsee it. It makes me laugh every time. It is hilarious. Next up, we have 3 Book of Lives, because Dio is often seen reading in the series, which I find somewhat entertaining, so I've decided to throw in the Book of Lives on top of it also just being a zombie deck. Next up, Overpowering Eye. Ironically, I'll explain this one because it's a little known card. You can use it. You can target one zombie you control with 2,000 less attack, and then it gets to attack directly that turn. Now, with Overpowering Eye, in the series, Dio invents a power for all vampires to use, but he's pretty much the only one that uses it other than one other character. And that is an eye beam, where he condenses the liquid in his eyes and then shoots them out as a laser. Don't ask how, it just does. So I decided to throw in Overpowering Eye for that reason. Next up is 3 second coin tosses. Doesn't really reference anything, but it's more just to kind of add some degree of consistency to the world over here. I'm sorry, Zobordo. Next up, 1 Dark Magic Curtain. Again, not really a reference, but more just consistency to another reference. Speaking of which, the Dark Magician also opens up this beauty, 1,000 Knives. Now, while this only works with the Dark Magician, this also works as a beautiful reference, because one of the key attacks that Dio uses in the final battle is throwing knives. And you could argue it is probably 1,000 of them, given how many he throws. It's kind of funny, actually. Then I just got Raigeki, MSTs, just staple cards. The Compulse and Bottomless are also really just staples, nothing to it. The final reference is actually this, Tutton Mask. So what this one does is, in the series, vampires are created through a stone mask that, I guess, hits like a specific point in your brain that unlocks everyone's hidden vampireness. I don't know, it's not really explained very well, but it's still kind of cool. So, the Tutton Mask, to me, kind of symbolizes the stone mask used to create the vampires. And that's pretty much it for the deck, reference-wise. Honestly, I found it amazing how many references I can make within the zombies archetype themselves. It honestly made it, extremely easy to make the deck not completely suck. So, it's not the most viable ever, but as you'll see, it can work very nicely when the stars align in my favor. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started on that one, shall we? Okay, so starting this off, we're going to be going with actually a mirror match of sorts, technically. Mine is a vampire deck, and this guy's also using a vampire deck, but his is more of a conventional vampire deck, if you will. Ignoring the whole, he's running a 60-card deck thing with 3 extra deck cards. I'm assuming those are going to be Vampire Knight Brahms, but I don't know. I don't think he ever pulls them out. Anyway, I just decided to go ahead and play it safe and set off a Mizuki to start. He ironically sent a Mizuki himself and then played... actually, him playing that Vampire Kingdom was kind of pointless because really nothing happens from it. Unfortunately, I had kind of a really lousy hand set up here, so I was not looking very good from the start. Most I could really do here was just, set the bottomless. Ironically, if I had just summoned the Mizuki, I would have been fine. But, hindsight. I just wanted more to be safe than anything. So, he summons out another Vampire Lady, and, So does that. They all have pretty much the same thing where they just send off cards. I decided not to bottom list the other one. That's mostly just because I kind of forgot about Vampire Kingdom. But it's not too big of a deal. I basically lost both my Titan masks, but they're very situational to begin with, so anyway. So I draw into a Zombie Master, which was really helpful here. So I just go ahead and get back Mizuki and just swing away, since fortunately Zombie World does count for, I mean not Zombie World, Vampire Kingdom does count for all zombie monsters, so I was able to get off a little bit of damage there and be fine. Plus I still have my Raigeki to fall back on should anything happen. So I wasn't too worried about all this. Unfortunately for me, this guy ended up drawing a freaking Book of Life and a Mizuki's, the Mizuki Sona's Graveyard, so this was going to be a slight issue for me at some point. The only thing I don't get is he sent a Vampire Genesis earlier with a Foolish Burial, and he doesn't go for it. I'm so confused why he didn't get the Vampire Genesis. It's not like he can't. I mean, Book of Life just says a zombie, so he very well could have, unless it has the effect of must be special summoned from your hand. Cannot be special. Why did he send that? Oh well, whatever. Anywho, I decided to clear off his field because it was going to be a problem. Dark Magic Curtain just to get out my Dark Magician. And just, punch away. Do a very good amount of damage there. And then I kind of had to end it there. There wasn't really a whole lot else I could do. It was pretty much just pray this guy doesn't kill me. But he just decided to set this. Not really a whole lot he could do. At this point, he kind of knew that he lost. So I managed to get out the world. I landed on Tails, but really it didn't matter. He rage quit at that point, but it was pretty obvious where that duel was going, regardless of me summoning him or not. Alright, so next up we have this one. This was not exactly one of my better duels, but I still got to kind of show off what the deck can do, a bit more than I could with the previous duel where I was facing off against the other vampire deck. In this case, I'm facing off against Cloudians. And I cannot tell you guys how much I hate Cloudians. Just because they cannot be destroyed by battle universally as an effect. And that just drives me crazy, because there's so many cards you can use to counter that and just keep them in attack mode, never take damage, and basically be invincible. It drives me insane. And I know it may not seem too bad, but trust me, in this duel you'll see just how infuriating it can be. So I decided to just go with Zombie Master. He activates Spirit Barrier, thus causing the issue that I have. I now cannot deal damage to this guy no matter what, and his monsters are always going to be there. The only drawback to Cloudians is that they're ever in face-up defense mode, then they instantly die. However, as long as he doesn't take damage, who cares? He has unstoppable monsters, and I can't do a thing about it. Yeah, unfortunately I didn't exactly have the greatest hand in the world at this point either, but I just decided, you know what, screw it, let's just go for the world, see what happens, and boom, heads. I am in the clear, I know that I can do it. All I need are my two monsters and some means of getting past this stupid Spirit Barrier combo, and I can take care of this. There was also a good amount of back row, but nothing else too worried about. He then double summons and goes for this, Eye of the Typhoon, which, for those of you guys who don't know, does typical Cloudian stuff, but he also changes the battle position of any monster when he attacks, but since I'm 3100 attack and defense, it doesn't matter, he's still not going to be able to beat me. And unfortunately, because they can't be destroyed by a battle, there's not a whole lot I can really do to him either. So at this point, we're just kind of in a... we're just kind of stalling this out, because we really can't do anything to each other. And I'm not drawing anything that's, like, terribly helpful, so I'm just, like him, trying to stall this out, see what happens. It's part goes on for a little while, not gonna lie. I need something that can get rid of these cards, and honestly, I wish I kind of had a heavy just to help me get rid of his back row. That would have been amazingly helpful. Though in this case, I would have just taken drawing one of my MSTs. That would have been equally as great. So, this is when things finally start to happen. He sets this card, and I'm thinking, alright, well, if nothing else, I'm not going to let him keep building monsters on me. That's just going to cause problems. So I just decided to go in and swing on this monster. Unfortunately, he triggers Mirror Force. However, this lets me finally do something I hadn't gotten to do in the deck previously. Use the Pendulum monsters. So I did that, and that. Got out Dark Magician and Vampire Duke. And attributed them both. Oh, first I activated Duke's effect in order to send off a monster. I figured the monsters were the biggest threat here. Tribute them and bring out the World. Uses effect. Land on tails, but fortunately I have a second coin toss up there, and boom, heads again. Never underestimate the power of Zorodo! So, however, I wasn't really feeling ballsy enough to try and go in for another attack after that. Although, also, that was main phase 2, but I digress. He keeps on going, and we kind of hit the standby fit point again, where neither one of us can do anything. It just dragged on and on. We both pretty much had our best monsters out, so there really wasn't anything that we could do. And unbeknownst to me, he had another Mirror Force, and I was kind of fearing that since I knew he was running Mirror Force. I figured there was a good chance I might accidentally run into another one, and I did not care much for that. Unfortunately, he kind of won this little standoff because he drew into a Cloud Poison, which automatically destroys any monster that attacks during the damage step, and I take 800 for it. And he also managed to get my field nice and open, so his Eye of the Typhoon can go in. Now, at this point, I knew I needed to do something, or I was going to be in quite a predicament. So what I decided to do was to use Zombie Master and just drop Mizuki and grab Pyramid Turtle. Just as kind of like a, if things go wrong, I still have him there to help me out. And go for Castell. I was debating between going for the monster or his Spirit Barrier, but immediately that monster was a bigger threat, so I just got rid of that and left Spirit Barrier there so I could just worry about it later. I managed to get rid of this thing, which summons some tokens for him. It seemed like, alright, this guy's just stalling, but he was actually building up something, which did cause me a massive problem, as you'll see later. But yeah, I'm more just trying to survive at this point, honestly. He summoned out that thing and this one, the Cirrostratus or whatever, which destroys monsters based on fog counters, and he got 4 counters because there were 4 Cloudians, and so I knew he was going to be able to destroy another monster once he got past Castell and did this. So I knew I needed to do something. Unfortunately, I was kind of in a bad position to begin with, so it really did depend on what I drew here, and fortunately for me, I drew into yet another Zombie Master, which worked out wonderfully for me. So I did that. I used Mizuki's effect in order to grab Pyramid Turtle again. Again, I was just kind of trying to play it safe. And since I knew Destruction was coming my way, I brought out Maestroke. Sort of one of the forgotten Nixies monsters, but to me, nonetheless, still a really good one. Unfortunately for me there, he decided to activate Mirror Force, but I was able to detach and still hold on to that, so I was able to get rid of one of his tokens at least. Unfortunately, I did still know that the other pop was coming, and of course, this guy drew the one card I needed him to not draw, Sanctuary in the Sky. So now he had double protection from damage, so I had to get rid of 2 spell cards and be able to do anything to this guy. I knew I would have to detach there. He attacked me there, which he didn't take any damage for, but I was still really confused why he did that just to get tokens. That seemed so random. And, of course, I now find out why. He sacrifices all 3 to bring out this guy, Nimbus Man, who gains counters for each tributed monster he gets, so he has 3 fall counters, and 500 attack for each. At this point, I knew I had a bit of a problem, but I just didn't realize how much of one. So I get Pyramid Turtle, and I just decide, alright, I need to set up some defenses, because I can't do anything to this monster right now. I'm going to need to find some other way. If I can use Turtle to get one of my vampires out, then I can use Vampire Kingdom, and I can hopefully at least kill this thing. Of course, there is still the whole issue of cannot be destroyed by battle. I didn't have a plan for that. Then he's played this, Cloudy and Squall, which caused a huge problem for me. During each standby phase, every face-up monster gets fog counter, and so I knew this was going to be a huge problem for me. I played Duke because I didn't realize that Squall did it for every monster, so that caused me some grief right there. And this is pretty much my last chance to do anything. So I just go ahead and play Kingdom. I just set that. It's mostly just so I could have some form of a defense against that thing. Like, I knew if I just put him in defense mode, it wouldn't do anything. But again, I didn't quite realize how bad this was going to be. So yeah, he puts a fog counter on everything. So that's 4 more fog counters. So this thing gets him to 2,000. He's up at 4,500. I'm not realizing how doomed I am. He brings out Storm Dragon and puts 1 more. So this thing is now at an even 5k. Yeah, I think you guys can see where this is going. Punches me there, brings me down to my last 800, and does Updraft, which removes all fog counters and burns me for 300 each. He really only needed 2, but he had like freaking 7 of them, so that was game for me there. Was not much I could do. This Clogging guy just drove me insane. I couldn't do anything about it. But they're still a good deck, so I can't really grieve on it too much. Finally, we have my duel against a Madolche player. And this was actually my best one. This one for me was just. I was able to really show off what the deck was capable of. I mean, I was able to do it with the Cloudians too, but not quite in the way I had hoped. So, just starting things off with a Pyramid Turtle. This guy decided to do a really odd opening move. He just summoned Angeli and attacked. Didn't do typical Angeli stuff, didn't tribute to get more monsters, just attacked a random face down monster with 1,000 attack monster. I truly could not comprehend what the hell they were thinking, but, you know, not like it would have made a difference. So I just decided, alright, let's just go ahead and get rid of this thing. So I just decided to beat the shit out of this Angeli here. Not much he could do about it. Of course, Madolche's things that they go into the deck whenever they're sent to the graveyard, so I knew I'd be seeing it again. I just set the Titan Mask for some protection and pass on to him. Not entirely sure why the guy didn't set his Mirror Force now that I'm looking, but it doesn't really matter. So, let's see. He goes ahead and gets rid of my Titan Mask. Nothing I can do about that, but it's not the worst thing in the world for me. I knew I'd be fine without it. So now I draw into a Mizuki, and I'm like, alright, so I'll just get this guy out in the field, and I'll just do some damage, and worst case scenario, he goes to the graveyard, and I have Mizuki in the graveyard. On the first swing, he activates that Mirror Force, so I lose 2 monsters, but I still have my Pyramid Turtle. I decided to play this one very safe and just keep Pyramid Turtle in defense mode for pretty much the entire time he was out on the field, just because I really did not want to lose Pyramid Turtle. Or at least I didn't want to be completely wide open, just for nothing. So, what I did, he didn't really do anything on that turn. It was just a draw and pass. I decided to see if I could go in a little bit more again. So, summon Zombie Master, use the effect, drop Duke just so I can have another vampire in the graveyard for if I can draw my other Duke. Yeah, Zombie Master, poke away, and it's just a Milfuse, so not a terribly big deal. I managed to go in for another 18, which is nice. Just racking up that damage early while it's still easy for me. And then I just set the Compulse just to be safe. Let's see, what did he do next? Anyway, there wasn't a whole lot he really could do next, so just sets 2 passes. And I gotta admit, guys, for how lousy this deck was built as, I'm honestly surprised how well it did. Like, I'll admit I had some rough duels, but for a deck that's basically running 3 different things, the synergy it had was truly amazing. So, yeah, I fell into another Mirror Force. I was, again, extremely grateful I was playing Turtle defensively there. I did not want to risk that. So, he gets Messengelato, and Pyramid Turtle's finally going to go away, but I now get to get off his effect, and I decide to go for a Vampire Duke, just so I can get off his effect when he's special summoned, of getting rid of another card of his deck. I just decided traps because I've been seeing enough of those guys, and I had a feeling if I chose Monster, it was just going to go right back to the deck, and I would have wasted his effect. So, I managed to draw Vampire Kingdom, which for me was just amazing. I went ahead and activated that and decided, alright, let's just go ahead and punch for massive damage. He decided to Fiendish Chain me, which, as I handed to him, was a pretty smart idea, because it would not have ended well otherwise. Now, it's his turn again, so he manages to draw into a land, which was a bit of a problem for me since he activates it now. I'm, of course, no longer tied to a Fiendish Chain, but I'm also now too weak to beat the Messengelato. Like, alright, I'll just compulse it back. I don't want to lose my monster just yet. But he has a Wiretap, so damn, I guess I gotta lose it. So, that happened. Goes Raygon back. I lose Duke, but it's not the end of the world. I've managed to get past majority of his back row, and he's top decking. So, all I need is a good draw. And unfortunately, I don't get it here, but you know, I still have Mizuki to fall back on. So I just do that. Oh wait, oh no, that's right. He breakthrough skills me here. I forgot about that part. I got a big play coming up, so I decided to kill that. Still get my Zombie Master stuff. Obviously gets the Messengelato back there, and so now he's up again. And of course he draws that Angeli. So this time he does use Angeli correctly by actually using its effect instead of just for some reason deciding to attack with it. But, you know, whatever. I'm not gonna just sit here and be that guy about it. So he makes the weirdest move I've ever seen. He goes for Leviair and then gets my Mizuki of all things. I don't understand why he did that. He breakthrough skilled my Zombie Master. I guess he thought I would no longer be under the impact of Vampire Kingdom or something, because he does that, loses it. He then takes even more damage, attacking me with Mizuki, and now I have Mizuki back in my graveyard, and he has no monsters. So he did use Angeli correctly. It was the subsequent monsters that he just... I don't even know what the hell he was thinking with that one. But now it is my time to shine, so I'm going to just do some Zombie Master stuff, do more Zombie Master stuff, fill my field, do what zombies do best. I use Mizuki in order to get back Duke, because now I know I can get rid of his back row. He'll do his thing. I send another trap that I don't feel like dealing with. Amazingly, he sends Warning, and then Kingdom kicks in, and I get to pop his final back row, which was just some Madolce bullshit, so I didn't really care. I tribute them, and get Zoroardo. And I land on heads. I'm like, alright, I win, but I need to be a dick about it. So I attack, and then just pass. However, because I landed on heads, during the end phase, I tribute my two other monsters to skip his turn entirely, and now it is my turn again. And of all things, I draw into Dark Magic Currents. Like, alright, I get to be an extra dick here. Just play that, and just summon the Magician, and just go in. It was so satisfying. Muda, muda, muda! And it's over. And that was pretty much the duel. That's what I have for you guys with this Dio deck. I know it's not the conventional kind of deck, but it's based on an anime character, so what are you going to do about that? I still had a lot of fun with it. Even if it's not one of my best decks, it does still hold a special place in my heart because it's from an amazing show, amazing series, and just getting to use a deck that has seemingly nothing in common and make it all just come together so beautifully. It's just what I love. It's that kind of creativity that I really appreciate out of duelists in this game, as opposed to everyone just using, what's good. Just come up with your own creation. That's some of the fun of it. Now, I realize I don't always do that, but when I can, I do like to try and be inventive. So, those are some of the things I wouldn't mind you guys asking me to do. If you want me to do a cool, inventive deck like this, it can be anything. I don't care. anything at all. And if it's viable in any way, shape, or form, I don't mean viable competitive, like viable, like, is it even possible? Then I'll do my best. As such, don't forget to let me know down in the comments if there are any decks you guys would like to see me do in future editions of Throwdown Thursday. As I said earlier, I hope I'll be able to get another video to you guys next Tuesday. If not, then the following Tuesday, my regular upload schedule will go back to normal. Until then, don't forget to also like and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, peace.